Good evening, folks. I texted Jack, our last counselor, to join the meeting. Haven't heard back, so we're about 6:02. We'll go ahead and get started. At this point, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for our July 13th regular council meeting. Call the meeting to order, and we'll start with Pledge of Allegiance. All right. It seems like Jack has joined us. So in essence, I'll recall the meeting to order now that we have a full complement of counselors. And we do not have a closed session tonight, so we will not adjourn to closed session. At this point, we have our agenda and any substantive changes or requests regarding the agenda from the council moving forward.
I'll move that we accept the agenda if there's nobody moving forward.
Let me see if there's any public comment regarding the agenda. Any public comment regarding our agenda? All right, yes, Paula.
I thought when it's written in the Trinidad ordinances or whatever, that public comment at the beginning of the council meetings are related to items not on the agenda.
That's the items from the floor. And so this is just, I run through the agenda item by item. I seek council input and public input for every item. So this is just public comment about the agenda. There will be time for non-agenda item comments.
Okay, so as you go through the agenda, does the public have an opportunity during the agenda?
Yes.
Okay. I have a paper written that I can.
This is what I'm asking for. Is there any public comment regarding the agenda? We need to approve our agenda before we can move forward. And so I'm seeking public comment regarding just the agenda.
If this is related to the agenda, yes. And I'll probably have some things to say as the agenda moves forward. And this could be read in 3 minutes or less.
Okay.
Yeah, it's. I do want to make a special note. If it does relate to an agenda item, of course, then you can read it during the agenda item. At this point, what we're doing is we have an agenda and we're deciding if the agenda looks fine or if something should be moved around or whatever. But it's not really talking about the agenda item, simply, do we approve it in its existing format, or do we need to move a few things around or so on? Sometimes people will pull something from the consent agenda and so on. So,
but I certainly don't have any option to add anything to the agenda. Is that correct?
Yeah, at this point, no, we're asking is that like our city manager said, is the agenda, do we need to move anything? Do we need to, really, that's it.
You can't add anything to the agenda at this point, and I certainly can't. Okay, no. I'll wait until.
Sounds good.
I'll wait.
Thank you. So we have a motion from Councillor Grover to approve the agenda. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Councillor West. At this point, do we have anybody opposed to the agenda? All right, seeing none, our agenda is approved. Moving on, for action agenda items, we'll do a roll call vote, but for these ministerial, we'll just go through and look for those opposed. The next item of business is the approval of minutes from both the May 11th and the June 8th meetings. So we'll start with the May 11th. Any substantive changes from the council on the minutes from the May 11th meeting? Okay. Any public comment on this with substantive changes to the May 11th minutes? All right, hearing none. I was not at the May 11th, so I can't make a motion. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from May 11th?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
First West, second Grover. Anybody opposed? Seeing none, that passes. Now on to the June 8th, the meeting minutes from the June 8th meeting. Any substantive changes regarding the June 8th minutes from the council? Or from the public? Okay, so no comment. Do we have a motion for the June 8th minutes?
I'll make that motion that we accept the June 8th minutes.
I'll second that motion.
First from Grover, second from Mr. Klumpus. All those in favor, anyone opposed to approving the minutes from either the May 11th or June 8th? All right, seeing none, that passes. So our minutes are approved. At this point, we'll move on to council reports and committee assignments. Let's start on my screen. I'll go clockwise, starting with Mr. Davies.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Mr. Grover?
I'd say I had a very exciting time. Being on the Redwood Coast Energy Authority Committee allowed me for an invitation to the microgrid with probably the smartest people in the area. Really. So that was really exciting for me to do. And being part of the subcommittees there, kind of in line with my aspirations of what I plan on seeing in this area in the future, to a lot of innovation going on. That micro is really exciting. I believe that there is going to be a hazardous material response authority meeting coming up. I've been getting some emails kind of tied into threads that don't really add up to me, but that's besides the point. They're getting something together, so I'll probably have something to report on that next month. As a matter of disclosure, I was elected to be one of the alternates delegates for the California State Green Party. So I'm very excited about being part of that. We'll have the opportunity to vote on some issues at the federal level now, and it's kind of one of my aspirations. If anybody wants to know more about that platform or Cooperation Humboldt or any of those entities around here, contact me at my dgrover@trinidad.ca.gov, and I'll explain things to you from my perspective anyways, and direct you to other people that might be more learned than I. Okay, and that's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you, David. Mr. West.
I have nothing to report at this time.
All right. Mr. Klumpus.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Good, and I'm working from my iPad, so hopefully that'll work out well tonight. No meetings were scheduled for the Indian Gaming's Benefit Committee because of a lack of funds since 2011. The California Coastal National Monument Gateway Committee has begun planning for the 150th anniversary for the Trinidad Head Lighthouse, and that celebration will take place on Saturday, December 4th of this year. The third item is the Humboldt County Visitors Bureau that continues to support activities within the county. And I do want to share that with that support, the Trinidad Bay Art and Music Festival will be held live in our town hall. It's part of the organizers is Julie Fulkerson, who was a previous mayor of Trinidad. There'll be 6 presentations starting Friday, August 13th, the 14th and 15th, and then Friday, August 20th, 21st, and 22nd. So this will be live musical performances, I think the first of this year in the town hall. And I did call to confirm it's a live presentation. So this gives everybody an opportunity to hear really a string orchestra come right to Trinidad over 6 different venues for that part. I have a rather extensive Trinidad Ad Hoc Water Committee and Water Advisory Committee, but I would like to hold that so I can discuss it during the drought portion of the agenda. Otherwise, I'll be repeating everything twice. So with everyone's permission, I'd like to just wait and hold it and do it at that time because it would just simply be more appropriate. Okay, thank you.
Makes perfect sense. Thank you, Richard. I attended the Humboldt Transit Authority, and the Transit Authority continues to sort of balance an influx of COVID money to provide safer buses, trainings for employees and such, and low ridership at the same time. People are hesitant to get back on the bus in great numbers, but it does seem to be headed in that direction. So keep your eyes out for more information too about Humboldt Transit Authority moving to an entirely either electric or hydrogen fuel based transportation system. So really exciting things happening in the next couple of years there. Redwood Region Economic Development was on a night that I had a conflict, so I was not able to attend. That's our council report. At this time, we'll move on to staff report. City Manager, Mr. Naffa, can you please give us staff report?
Sure. We have the staff report and also the law enforcement report. So I'm going to turn it over to Lieutenant Miller and let him do the law enforcement first.
There we are. Good evening, everybody. Let's see here. I got a few things to actually report out on tonight. So I'll start with what I usually speak about regarding our stats from last month in comparison to the month before. So in June, we responded to a total of 152 calls for service in the greater Trinidad area. And again, this is not just in the city limits, but also surrounding areas on St. Patrick's Point and West Haven. A few, little ways out from the city limits. So 152 calls for service, that's down 27% from May, where we had 207 calls for service. We did 23 reports that resulted in 1 arrest. 7 of those reports were for felonies and 6 were for misdemeanor investigations. We had 1 assault, 1 domestic violence, 10 vehicle or building break-ins, 2 vandalisms, 5 thefts, 9 disturbances, and 1 stolen or recovered vehicle. In addition to 7 alarms that we responded to, 15 patrol check requests, and then we did 7 suspicious person or vehicle checks, 7 unwanted subject calls, 2 shots heard or fireworks calls, and 1 traffic stop. And we had 83 miscellaneous calls for service that wouldn't fit in any of those other categories, which was down 36% from May, which was a total of 129 calls for service. I just wanted to pull some stats here also and kind of give you guys a comparison of what we're looking at from what we saw last month to what we saw at the same time last year in 2020 of June. So in June of this year, again, we had 152 calls for service. In June of 2020, though, we had 202 calls for service. So the calls for service went down in June. The reports are actually surprisingly the same number, 23 in both years. And then just of note here, it looks like trending wise, it's as I reported out, we had 10 vehicle break-ins or building residential break-ins, and we also had 10 back in June of 2020. And the rest of the numbers are pretty close. They're within 1 or 2 of each other on all the other, crime sections that I reported out on. Except our miscellaneous calls for service. Again, we had 83 of this in June of this year, and in June of last year, we had 116. So those numbers are also down from last year. I want to touch on vehicle burglaries. I talk about it quite a bit in these meetings, but it's never, I can't reiterate enough how important it is for people to understand that this is that time of the year where we see a spike in vehicle break-ins. And it's not just up in the Trinidad area, it's actually in all of our beach communities. So Samoa, Manila, all the way down to Lolita and Craft Park in those areas. So the car burglars are out and about. So again, the sheriff's office wants to pass a message along that please don't leave any valuables in your vehicle. I know that doesn't stop all of the thefts because some of these criminals that simply go up and break a window and rummage through everything all the same. However, not all of them do that. So if you can keep everything out of sight, you have better odds of your car not being broken into. So again, you want to pass that message along and reiterate it. You've heard me talk about signs warning the public of the possibility that, the area is known for car break-ins. So Mad River Rotary has generously donated a number of those signs to the communities, and they'll be coming up. They'll be going up here pretty soon all along. You should see some of them on at least Scenic Drive, Moonstone, and those areas in Clam Beach. So you'll start seeing the signs. They're yellow and purple. They're pretty noticeable. They're distinct from any other signs that are up along the roads. One of the other things that started last Sunday, actually, and it's a really good thing because it goes hand in hand with vehicle break-ins, is the sheriff's office was able to secure a grant to fund a beach patrol deputy. So that person started full-time on Sunday, and it's a deputy that was already in service, so they're not going through a training program or anything like that, but their sole responsibility is going to be patrolling our waterways and our beaches. So the nice part about that is we have somebody now that can be focused on these vehicle break-ins, who doesn't have to worry about responding to a disturbance call in McKinleyville, for example, or an alarm call in Fieldbrook or something like that. So he'll be working in conjunction with the other deputies. And along with that grant, it also allows us to augment him with overtime deputies on the beach patrols. So hopefully you should be seeing an increased number of patrols along our beaches. And again, this is a dedicated patrol to those areas. So I think it's going to have a significant impact. At least that's our hope. Deputy Moss, because we did just have a shift change. Deputy Moss is still up there assigned as your full-time deputy sheriff. And then you're going to see a new face, Deputy Aguilera. He's the half-time deputy that you'll see up there. So if you see him around, introduce him. He's a new deputy, nice guy though. Go introduce him. Welcome to town. And then I just wanted to touch on fireworks because that seems to be a popular topic around this time of the year and for the next couple months coming up. So overall, countywide, the sheriff's office responded to a total of 72 calls regarding illegal fireworks. We changed our direction this year. In previous years, most of these calls were all referred to CAL FIRE to handle, and they'd send out their law enforcement. However, this year, Sheriff Hansel changed direction and decided that we would be responding to those. So we had a total of 72 countywide. For the Trinidad area, there was a total of, let me count them up real quick here. There was a total of 8, and 2 of those reports came from in the city itself. So the rest of them were, it looks like, in the West Haven, Patrick's Point Drive areas. So again, this practice is going to continue because we usually see these complaints continue for the next month, 2 months. So get the word out there. If you call the sheriff's office, we'll come out and investigate those as well as we can. Oftentimes, it still doesn't change the fact that these folks are gone by the time we get there. However, we were able to successfully seize illegal fireworks on 4th of July and make several arrests and issue citations to folks. So we are having some success. So just encouraging, if you're having a problem in your neighborhood with somebody letting off illegal fireworks, please call the sheriff's office and we will respond. Go over my notes here real quick. I believe that is all that I have.
Thank you, Lieutenant Miller. Questions or comments for Lieutenant Miller? Dave, I saw your hand go up.
Oh, yeah, I didn't get the guy's name. Very tall. Is he one of our new guys? He was kind of walking out of Chevron when I was walking in.
Very tall? Well, I don't think either one of those guys
are over 6'2", anyways.
Oh, no, that's probably one of the McKinleyville deputies. Neither one of Deputy Moss and Deputy Aguilera aren't that tall.
Okay, he just happened to be at the store. Okay,
Mhm.
because he's kind of
Yeah.
walking out. So usually I introduce
Mhm.
myself in case it is one of the new guys. But all right, thank you.
You're
Yeah.
Other questions? Go ahead, Richard.
Just want to make a comment. I appreciate the analysis, Lieutenant Miller, and the comparison to a year ago. It helps to put it in perspective, but thank you.
Lieutenant Miller, I have a question. Several neighbors say that they've got folks on camera walking around their yards, their driveways and whatnot, lifting door handles. Is that something, is the sheriff's office interested in seeing the footage? What's oftentimes, it's low resolution or they're far away. I guess my question is, what should folks be looking for that they have good footage to say, hey, to the sheriff's office, I've got someone on camera lifting door handles, trying to get into cars in my neighborhood?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, video cameras are pretty common nowadays at a lot of businesses, residences, and all over the place. But the resolution, like you said, Steve, is, that's a big kicker, because oftentimes we will get calls and they'll say that there's video of the crime, and when you look at the resolution on the cameras, they're not useful. The other thing is the angle of the cameras too. A lot of times people put them up high so they're less, people can't vandalize them or the bad guys can't get them. However, the problem with that is that they point downwards, and a lot of these folks like to wear hats and hoodies and last year masks. So it makes identifying who they are positively very, very difficult. So placement and quality of the cameras is huge. If you see somebody though that's going around, faking door handles and things like that, that's definitely something that you should call the sheriff's office about. It's not a 911 call necessarily. I mean, unless they're checking the doors to your house and you're inside and you're worried, that they're going to break it while you're in there. But give us a call, and the deputy who responds, they'll be the ones to best determine whether or not we need to stop and look at the footage. And how to proceed forward, because we don't always look at the footage. Sometimes we don't need to.
Yeah. All right. If I hear, or if anyone hears anybody who has a security camera pointed in their yard, and it sounds like the best thing is to call the main line for the sheriff, not 911, but to call the main line. Okay.
One other thing to add on that real quick,
Okay.
sorry, is also the sheriff's office. We do have a self-registry of cameras where you can go onto our website and register your camera with the sheriff's office if you want to. It's completely voluntary. The pro to that is that when we have a crime in the area, let's say we have a crime 2 blocks away, we know where these cameras are, so we can go look and perhaps catch a person when they think they're scot-free and they've taken their hood or hat off. So I encourage people to use that too, but it is voluntary.
Great. Richard?
What is that non-emergency phone number?
It's 707 445 7251.
Thank you.
All right, I put it in the chat. Thank you very much, Lieutenant Miller. Appreciate it. Any final questions, comments for Lieutenant Miller? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Eli, do you have more for your staff report?
Yes. So in addition to the items in the staff report, I do have an update regarding the West Haven cell tower. And they said that the schedule is holding, and that schedule is construction already started the last week of May, on the West Haven site. It's expected to be completed toward the end of September. The fiber that's needed to operate the site, they're ordering it now, and it's forecast to be delivered by mid-November. They knew that there was going to be a delay there because fiber is not quite that easy to get a hold of. So mid-November, and then once it is all connected, it'll take a couple weeks to fine tune it. And they said with the year-end holidays, we probably won't start decommissioning the existing tower until first quarter of 2022. And these forecasts are based on weather. Meanwhile, I told her, as I repeatedly have, I said, please check with us when it's connected and fine-tuned to make sure reception is equal to or better than what we currently have in the city. So, so basically, once we get towards the end of November and into December, if residents notice that the reception is better or worse, let us know. If it's about the same, it would be hard to tell. But if you notice it's better or worse, let us know at the city hall so that we could relay that information to Verizon. Secondly, this is for the council members. I just got notice yesterday, so I thought you can put it on your calendar. Friday, August the 13th, from 3:30 p.m. till 5 p.m. will be the League of California Cities Redwood Empire Division general membership meeting and election. So they hold these meetings quarterly. It happens that this one will be in Eureka. So it'll be live, so you can attend it in Eureka on Friday, August 13th in the afternoon from 3:30 to 5. So if you're interested, let me know, and then I will contact the league. As part of this, they will be having, let me see where my note is here. Yeah, so they're having an outdoor catered dinner will follow. And then after they get done with the initial business, the attendees will tour the Eureka's newly opened Skywalk. So they'll have the meeting, tour the Skywalk, and then an outdoor catered dinner will follow. So if you're interested, let me know, because I need to let the league know by August 5th. And that's all I have.
Tom?
Yeah, thank you, Eli. I have had a number of inquiries regarding the appeal for the Van Wyck Trail CDP to the Coastal Commission. So I was wondering if you could let the public know what the status of that appeal is.
Yeah, the status is that I will be getting back in touch with the Coastal Commission. During our last conversation, we had talked about the fact that we were trying to find what the city possibilities are with that trail, and at the same time to try to find out what the Coastal Commission was looking for. Naturally, it's still closed because of the insurance and because of the failure in the existing trail. So I will check with them and find out how they were progressing from the local office to the Coastal Commission itself. And I could get back to you in the near future, as soon as I get an update from them.
Okay, thank you. So it sounds like it's in the Coastal Commission's hands now that.
Right, yeah. And I need to talk to them to, make sure that it is progressing, because they were waiting to get some information from us. But at our last conversation, I indicated that we're unable to get all the information they needed, and told them that they should be proceeding on their track rather than waiting for our track.
Okay, thank you.
Richard?
Yes, just one correction or change, Eli, to your city manager's report. You have down that the Water Advisory Committee meeting tomorrow starts at 6 p.m. Actually, the calendar is 5 p.m. I don't want folks to miss it.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that to my attention. When I wrote the report, I had 6 written on my calendar. And then today I checked it and I says, oh, wow, it's at 5 p.m. So yeah, I'm glad you brought it to everyone's attention. So okay. It'll be tomorrow night at 5 p.m. via Zoom.
Correct. And if you're on the East Coast, it's 8 p.m.
Yes, Richard, we know that you're staying up late for this.
No
Thank
worries.
Other questions regarding the staff report or comments? All right, at this point then, we will move on to items from the floor. At this time, members of the public may comment on items not found on the agenda. Individual comments will be limited to 3 minutes or less. Comments should be directed to the council or city staff as a whole. Council members or staff have limited responses. At this point, I open it up to items from the floor. Paula?
Well, what I have written here to read is all about the water situation related to what Richard will be talking about.
So if it's on the agenda, we ask that you save your comments for the agenda discussion action.
Okay, it's related to the agenda. It has some things that Richard does not directly address.
So we will wait until we have our discussion regarding the Water Advisory Committee and the
Okay,
ordinance.
great.
Other items from the floor at this point? All right, seeing none. And Paula, would you mind muting yourself just in case?
Oh, sorry.
No worries, no worries. All right, at this point then, we will move on to our consent agenda. Again, I'd like to read it just to make sure I cover it. All matters on the consent agenda are considered routine by the City Council and are enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of any items. If discussion is requested by any council member, that item is removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. A single opportunity for public comment on the consent agenda is available. So at this point, do we have any counselors who wish to remove anything from the consent agenda? All right, seeing none. Do we have any public comment on the consent agenda, which consists of the staff activity report, financial statements, law enforcement report, and the city manager contract renewal? All right, seeing no public comment, bring it back to the council. David?
I'll make a motion that we accept the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
First from Grover, second from West. Gabe, do you mind doing a roll call vote on this one, just to be sure?
Let's start with Councilmember Grover,
Yes.
Davies,
Yes.
Clompus,
Yes.
West,
Yes.
and Mayor Ladwig.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Moving on to our discussion action agenda items. Our first discussion item for this evening is the first reading of Ordinance 2021-03, the water shortage contingency. And we have our city planner with us, Trevor, who will introduce this discussion item.
Good evening. Thank you. Yeah, so you'll recall that we worked on a water shortage contingency plan last year. The council adopted it. In my memo, I said February, but it was actually January 26th of this year. But it needs an ordinance in order to implement portions of that plan. And so that's what the intent of this ordinance is. It will implement that plan. And so it will replace the existing chapter 13.08, which is a water rationing ordinance. It will also revise section 1304, 440E of the city's water service ordinance, which just in general prohibits water waste. Currently, it says it you can't use water in a wasteful manner, but this would be more specific. So just a little bit more background. A lot of the water shortage contingency plan I took from the city of Santa Cruz as a model. And so the ordinance, I did the same thing. Obviously, there's some differences between Santa Cruz and Trinidad. A couple of the notable ones being city of Santa Cruz has more staff in terms of responsibilities. So in the case of Trinidad, most of the responsibilities are going to fall to the city manager. And then Santa Cruz also, well, they do use some surface water diversions. They also have a reservoir. So, for them, conserving early in the season, helps preserve water in that reservoir. Trinidad is really relying on what's coming down the creek. So conservation earlier in the early water stages are partially to get people used to conserving. So, with Trinidad, there is the potential for creek levels to drop pretty rapidly. And so, getting people into the mode of conservation, starting the education, starting the outreach and things like that, hopefully will make things easier if it gets to the point of actual rationing. In addition, it could also preserve the bypass flows. So there are some requirements for what the city has to let go past the water plant. So if people are conserving, then there's more water to go down the creek and meet those bypass flows. There are, when I was writing the ordinance, a couple of things came up, and I ended up deviating from the water shortage contingency plan somewhat. So I just wanted to point those out. In the contingency plan, it's the city council that declares each stage. And then in the ordinance, I realized that might not be reactive enough. And might not be able to happen quickly enough. And so for stage 1, which is just based on it being drought conditions like now, I think that can be set in motion by the city council. But then after that, I gave authority to declare the subsequent stages to the city manager. And he would be, that would be done in consultation with a water shortage response team. The kind of the major thing that's different is that I realize the restrictions that are in the plan are pretty vague and a little bit sparse. And the reason for that, I think, when I looked back, is I sort of put those in as placeholders and ideas, and I offered the Planning Commission sort of a menu of other options and ordinances, hoping they would sort of pick and choose from those menus to put restrictions in. And we never really got into that in depth of discussion. And so those restrictions stayed a little general. And so these restrictions are more specific. They are a little bit more restrictive. So I just wanted to point that out. And if you want to go with the ones that are currently in the ordinance, then we would need to update the plan as well. And then some of the administrative, I pointed out some of the sections where some administrative responsibilities are given to the water shortage response team. And then I'm just pointing out that another option would be to give those authorities to the city manager. I think when we were talking about the plan, it was decided that having a team would be good, especially, for considering things like exceptions and appeals and things like that, as opposed to just the city manager, take some of that responsibility off of him. And then just I made a note that on the June 8th meeting, the city council changed the makeup of the water shortage contingency plan. So we'll want to update the plan to include that as well. So the ordinance has been reviewed by the attorney and staff. So I think it is ready to go. And if it's adopted in its current form, we would also want to revise the water shortage contingency plan to be consistent with the ordinance. So we could do that maybe at the next meeting at the second reading. Richard pointed out a couple of typos, and that is in the first paragraph under stage 2 through 5. It refers to, let's see, it's the water, it refers to the WSCT, and those, in each of those 4 sections, that should be the water shortage response team. So it should be WSRT. And then stage 5 is missing from 1308-120. So it should say stage 5 : there for that section. And then just one other thing for the whereases, there's a blank for the adoption of the plan. And The plan is a standalone document. It can be revised to some degree. Not everything in the plan is codified in this ordinance. Some things don't have to be codified. So this is really, the ordinance is limited to really what needs to be in the regulations in terms of restricting people's water use and fees and fines and enforcement and appeals and things like that. So what I would propose there is, whereas on January 26, 2021, the City Council of the City of Trinidad adopted a water shortage contingency plan, which may be amended from time to time, that describes how the city will respond to future water shortages. So I would revise that whereas. And I think that's it, but I'm happy to answer any questions or take comments and suggestions.
And can you just point me in the direction of the whereas that you were just referring to?
Yeah, so it's the second whereas on page 3 of 14 of the ordinance.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All right, questions, comments from the council regarding this discussion? Yeah, Richard.
Yeah, I've actually gone through this line by line. The interesting thing about Santa Cruz is that they actually will downgrade the amount of water that each resident can use. They actually stipulate going from 5 cubic feet of water from 6 to 5. We really can't do that. We don't have the ability real time to measure usage in homes and commercial uses. So I think what Trevor Parker has been able to put together here is quite complex, but it covers what needs to be covered. The ordinance itself, the actual plan connected to it, the drought and water shortage contingency plan, can be updated as needed. The only change I'd recommend is on pages 5, 6, 8, 9. It's the same change, just the abbreviation of the actual team itself will change from, WSCT to WSRT. That's all. It's the same copy and paste in each one of those in stage 2, 3, 4, and 5. Otherwise, I think it's quite complete. It's a document that is very timely, and it's likely to be of real benefit to us as we move forward as a community. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. And those changes, I believe, were discussed by Trevor, so it seems that that's easy to incorporate. So, David?
Yeah, and I did read the recommendations too, and it seems like accepting the first reading would be the logical thing to do, since we already know there's going to be changes made. It'll alleviate us from that first reading again if we accept it tonight. I don't know if I'm jumping ahead of other comments, but that's my 2 cents.
All right. Tom?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to the change that gives the city manager the power to declare various water shortage. I believe we've discussed when we made the committee, the composition of the committee, the WSRT, that those meetings would hopefully be noticed publicly, that was happening. I think we discussed that in the past. So I don't know if there's a provision for that in this ordinance or not, especially if we're wanting people to follow this ordinance. It'd be helpful if they could be part of the discussion when decisions are being made.
Tom, I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're asking for, that you just want to assure that we're publicly noticing the meetings of the team?
Yeah, I think that's what we discussed when the composition of the team. So I just was concerned because of the changes that she put in here, that the city manager had sole discretion to go to stage 2, but I don't see it like written in conjunction with. So if it is, guide me to that. If it isn't, I would prefer that it mentions that these decisions are being made with the water shortage response team.
And what I'm reading is the city manager, upon recommendation by the water shortage response team, that the criteria delineated, so on and so forth. Each introduction to stages is the city manager, upon recommendation by the response team. Is that what you're asking for?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And that the public knows when those meetings are going to be held.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's what
I think we're doing what you're asking for.
Yes, sounds
Okay.
like it. Thank you.
I remember that too, because we wanted to make sure that the word gets out, because you can't expect people to be cutting back on their water when only a few people know about it. Make sure that everybody possible knows.
Yeah, and we've already got it. I believe, at least what I've seen, is in place for the water shortage, or the water advisory team is already meeting, and those other meetings would also be publicly noticed. So yes, that's my recollection as well.
Yeah, and I appreciate the delineation of what is acceptable and what isn't in each of these stages. It makes it very clear. So,
All right, Jack.
Trevor, I have a question about stormwater and the water, our water plan here. I understand under stormwater, we were restricted in doing things like washing our cars in our driveway and doing certain types of things with hoses in our driveway that washed into the stormwater. Is that true? Is it true that we aren't really supposed to be washing on pavement at all, our cars?
So yeah, that's a good point. So, and yeah, Eli asked me about that just before the meeting. I was able to, I dug up that ordinance. So that was codified in Ordinance 2015-01. It's Chapter 1316 of the Municipal Code. And that ordinance, prohibits illicit discharges, certain discharges. One of those is washing cars on impervious surfaces, but it only applies to the MS4 area of town. I was trying to think whether we need to refer to that chapter in this ordinance. I don't think we do. I mean, that ordinance is on the books. It's already part of the regulations. I don't know if we need to reiterate it in this ordinance.
Would it be wise to refer to it under F, where it says cleaning of structures and vehicles, that there are restrictions beyond our water ordinance? So people would be able to refer to it. I'm just worried that people are going to look at this and say, oh, good, I can wash my car if I have a shutoff nozzle, which my understanding is we can't do that. And I don't know where that break is in town, but it would seem that people, if they're looking at this, are breaking I don't know, maybe just a reference to it so they would know that there are other restrictions.
So we could say, notwithstanding section, let's see, it was 13-16-080, I think it was, of the stormwater ordinance. And then that would tell people that there's some additional restrictions that they should look at.
Thank you. That would be great.
And this is getting in the weeds, but it seems with our current stormwater catchment systems, this wouldn't be an issue in terms of water running into the bay, because it's not. Is that something that we need to consider? Because right now, and I apologize, I'm not familiar with MS4, what that region is, but it seems is that any water that hits the street now is going to get into an infiltration chamber at least until the stormwater is complete this summer everywhere in town. Is that something that we need to address, Trevor, or does that change anything here?
That is a great question. The part of the purpose of doing the stormwater project is to eliminate the city from being an MS regulated as an MS4. So MS4 is municipal separate sewer stormwater system, something like that. And
I'll take your word for it.
It comes from the Clean Water Act, so it's actually federal, but then the state implements it. So it regulates stormwater, and because Trinidad Bay is an ASBS, that's why Trinidad has those regulations. And so the idea was that once we eliminate the outfall, Trinidad will no longer be an MS4, and we actually could rescind that whole ordinance. Becky recently informed us that the water board said, no, they still might regulate the city under the waste discharge requirements as an MS for it. So we're not totally sure how that's going to play out. So, but this ordinance isn't going to be part of the LCP or anything like that. So, if it needs to be updated in the future, that should be easy enough to do.
And I just want to be clear, I'm not advocating for allowing people to wash their cars during a shortage. I guess I just want to make sure that we're citing regulations that are accurate. So it sounds like we'll perhaps get some feedback on that in the future, but for now, continue with the ordinance as it's written. Okay, other questions, comments for Trevor regarding from the council regarding this ordinance? All right, seeing none, let's open it up to the public. Any public comment regarding this agenda item on ordinance 2021-03 regarding water? All right, seeing none, bring it back. We have had our first reading with the changes that have been suggested, and no further action or comments at this point. So thank you very much, Trevor, for that, and council for reading this thing line by line. And just to reiterate, I know that everyone said it, but I just would feel missing here if I didn't. It's an amazing ordinance. And so the work put into this thing is very clear and covers so many different scenarios, and really appreciate the hard work on it. So thank you for that.
And if I may, our city attorney requested that we have the reading of the title. So
Yeah.
in order, so in other words, reading the title for the first reading in lieu of reading the whole ordinance.
Okay, so the council has discussed, and we've had a first reading of ordinance 2021-03. Now, where is it? Let's see. Amending section 1304.440 and replacing, no, that's not what we're asking for. I apologize.
Are we supposed to accept it, like the recommendation? Is that what you're saying, Eli? Like to accept it and read it? That we
No,
accept it?
in order to properly do the first reading, usually people would read the whole ordinance. But the city attorney said in lieu of reading the whole ordinance, that we read the title into the record, and that would be sufficient and indicate that it is in lieu of reading the whole ordinance.
Okay, so that's the mayor's job, is what you're saying. Okay.
Isn't that with a motion though, and a second? That's what we've done in the past when we've.
Yeah, I believe you're right, Tom. I apologize. So let's do this just to cover our bases. Let's do this with a motion.
Can we do it with suggested comments as well? Is that acceptable? I just want to make sure this doesn't come back next month and we say, well, you made some changes, so therefore your first reading isn't going to work.
Right.
Is that acceptable to say with the changes? I see Trevor nodding your head. Okay.
Yeah, I have a plan, and I have a plan on how to read it. I'll give it
Go
a
for
try.
it. You just put yourself on mute, though.
Now I'm off mute, right?
Yeah, now you're off.
When I went to the ordinance, it wouldn't let me control my camera anymore. Okay, you can hear me now though, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that the council approve the first reading of ordinance 2021-03 of our water contingency plan. And in accordance with the ordinance, direct staff to amend the WSCP. That's it.
I don't know if that's enough detail, Dave, to be honest.
Oh, because that's, I just word.
Title.
Okay, let me do that then. Let me go back over.
Do you have the title?
Yes.
Page 51.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we approve the first reading of ordinance number 2021-3, amending section 13.04.440 and repealing chapter 13.08, water rationing, and adding a new chapter 13.8, water shortage regulations and restrictions to Title 13 of Trinidad Municipal Code. How's that?
We have a first.
I'll second.
We have a second from Clompus.
Yes.
Gabe, can you do a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Mayor, we've got a motion and a second, Grover and West, to waive the full reading of the ordinance read by title only. And we'll start with Councilmember Grover,
Yes.
Davies,
Yes.
Pompous,
Yes.
West,
Yes.
and Ladwig.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously.
And Richard, I did give you credit because your hand went up, but you know.
That's okay. No worries.
You'll have
No foul.
you'll have your day in the sun or the rain, depending on how you look
No
at
problem.
it. All right. Thank you very much for that discussion and for that vote, Gabe. Moving on, scrolling. Let's see. Our next item for discussion is discussion update regarding the drought. And so this is a presentation led by Council Member Clompus.
Okay, thank you. So, I think Gabe might be able to bring this up to get started. That's great. Just scroll up a little bit. Perfect. Oh, no, that's fine. We can start there. So can everyone hear me all right? Yeah. Is that a yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right. So I want to start first by explaining the Trinidad Ad Hoc Water Committee. This committee was authorized under the city's current code, Chapter 13.08, to deal with drought conditions. And it consists of two council members, myself and Council Member Jack West, and unofficially supported the city manager, Eli Naffa. As we have heard tonight, this water ad hoc committee will be replaced by the water shortage response team once the water shortage ordinance is fully adopted. So hopefully I and Jack will be retired and be replaced by a more appropriate team as time goes on. Historically, I just want to go through this as carefully and accurately as I can to make sure everybody really understands the nature of the drought. On May 10th, the governor expanded the state's drought emergency declaration to include 41 counties. That included Humboldt County. On July 11th, just a few days ago, he increased it 9 more counties to now include 50 counties in California, which is about 42% of the state that we're now in a drought emergency. The governor has asked for everyone to conserve by 15%. When I look for additional data, and I really want this to be data-driven, the National Weather Service Forecast Office, as of June 24th, that was the most recent report I could bring up for Eureka area, is that there's an extreme drought conditions along the Klamath watershed. The drought status worsened from severe drought to extreme drought along the Klamath watershed, including parts of Del Norte, Humboldt, and Trinity counties. 2 years of below normal rainfall have depleted snowpack and resulted in poor stream flow on mainstream watersheds, with tributaries continuing to show signs of drying up much earlier this year. In addition, we've all seen blue-green algae grow in the summertime. It's been reported as early as late May along the Mad River, which is much earlier than normal. Humboldt County has had 50 to 7% decrease of normal precipitation combined with above normal temperatures across the state. And just today with CNN, July 13th, they reported that wildfires in California have scorched 3 times more land than the same period last year, which was a record season. Last year, 4.1 million acres burned in California. So that kind of gives you a little bit of background. We're down a little over 10.5 inches of rainfall in our area. A very interesting website you can visit at your convenience is drought.gov. You can drill down to California, Humboldt County, and even the city of Trinidad. We've had some challenges in the city of measuring the stream flow in Liffenholtz Creek. We contracted with Pacific Watershed last July to provide a real-time measurement service that would give us at all times, 24 hours a day, a reading on the creek. And that really hasn't happened. So we've asked one of their engineers to come in every week to give us readings. And the last reading I had for this report was July 7th, when it was 1.15 cubic feet per second. That was about a 6.5% decrease from the week before. Today, Eli was able to forward a reading to me of 1.21 cubic feet per second, which means it increased slightly. And what you'll notice with this trend line is that it trends downwards, but it's not a linear equation or expression. It's not as if you have a straight line from A to B. It's going to wiggle a bit, but unfortunately, the trend is down in the cubic feet we have per second flowing in the creek. And because we don't have any storage ability, when you get a heavy rainfall, you get a lot of flow in the creek. So back on June 14th, we have this huge amount of flow indicated in the chart. When you look at the rainfall for the same period the day before, we had 1.5 inches of rain. So it does reflect that when you have lots of rain, the water comes pouring down Liffenholtz Creek and ends up in the Pacific Ocean for that. Gabe, can you scroll up for me, please? There you go. Again, looking at drought.gov, Trinidad is in extreme drought. I've put an arrow, we're tucked in right underneath there. And also the graph or the stream flow estimate on the bottom indicates from the U.S. Geological Survey that we have real-time stream flow, which is low for the area and trending lower. So this kind of gives you some indication of what we're facing as a city, in that we've kind of put all of our eggs in one basket. And unfortunately, Liffenholtz Creek may end up not being adequate for our needs as the year goes by because of a second-year drought that's been quite serious. Can you scroll up to the next page, please? So I want to share just a short quote from Jeffrey Mount. He's a fellow with the Public Policy Institute, quite interesting. The universal truism is that by the time you react to a drought, it's too late to react to a drought. And the majority of things you have to do to mitigate impacts have to be done before the drought. So part of what I want to introduce tonight from the ad hoc committee is that Trinidad is now experiencing officially a stage 1 drought, according to the reference table in the water shortage ordinance document. And this really requires a responsibility on the city council's part to communicate this to the public, to Trinidad, to our residents and our water customers. So there really are 4 parts to this communication plan. This was laid out last year by our committee. The first will be a press release that has been written and can be released tomorrow to some local media that will indicate that we are in a drought and we are asking for voluntary water conservation steps. So a stage 1 drought is really educating the public and requesting voluntary water conservation. A letter has already been written and is being reproduced that will be mailed out to 323 water customers. The 1,000 I have listed there under B is incorrect. I will update this tonight and send it to Gabe so he'll have it corrected. 323 customers as of today will be receiving a letter again requesting voluntary conservation. The website should be updated to include a drought declaration so that folks going to the website can get information about how to conserve. And then finally, the last part of the communication plan, each of the water customers in Trinidad gets a very nice little postcard every month with the monthly bill indicating the amount of water they've used and what they owe. But the back of that postcard really goes unused. So we've created some colored stickers starting with yellow, orange, and then red that would have the drought stages and indications and where to get more information and how to conserve. So these steps are necessary in order for us to preserve the flow and the water that we currently have. Nobody knows how serious this will be, but the trend is that it will get worse as time goes on. And we're just really now in the middle of July, and it's becoming quite significant statewide. So I hope that's information that the public can use, but this will be going out in the next 48 hours. So people will be able to get more information about conservation for that. The final comment I want to make is about the Trinidad Advisory Water Committee. This is a separate committee. We had our first meeting on June 14th. We have objectives and purposes. And I just want to make sure the public understands how they can participate and what the purpose and objectives are. The purpose of this committee is to evaluate the water needs of the city, analyze potential options for water sources and infrastructure, assist the council in pursuing water-related opportunities, including funding. And I will mention that last night, before midnight, Governor Newsom signed Senate Bill 129, which set aside significant investments. And one of the areas of investing was water resiliency. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to tap into that fund to help us. But the objectives of this committee is to create a public forum to address and discuss the water concerns and solutions, assist the city manager and public works department in addressing water issues, make balanced and informed recommendations to the city council on ways to improve the supply of water, and report to the council regularly. So I do want to share, we had our first meeting on June 14th. We have assigned areas of investigation to all 5 members. Those 5 members worked very diligently and actually concluded their preliminary report, which will be shared verbally and reviewed tomorrow, starting at 5 p.m. My topic was investigating and repairing leaks in the water system. Dave Grover was investigate trucking in potable water for emergency purposes. Cheryl Kelly was investigate increasing water storage. Bryce Kenny was investigate the legal rights to access water from Mill Creek. And Dwight Miller investigate sourcing water from Humboldt Bay Water District. And Eli Naffa was about the report from Becky Price Hall on grant options. And I apologize to Becky for misspelling her name, forgot the Y. So this report, this committee tomorrow, hopefully starting at 5, will share these reports. I've read them all. I had public comment before the meeting that the public really wanted as early access to these documents as possible. So instead of publishing these 3 days before as required by law, we published these 5 days before the meeting, hopefully giving everyone a few more days to look through them. But there's some deferred maintenance issues. There's a number of issues that these reports, once they're finalized, will be sent to the city council. That's part of our job, is to send data and factual information so that the city council can review and, if necessary, take steps to alleviate some of the issues. So that's really all I wanted to say. There's just a lot going on right now with water in California and Humboldt County and also Trinidad. But hopefully the teams in place are hard at work and will continue to volunteer their time so we can help solve these issues and help the city get through a very difficult time period in the drought. So, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the opportunity to report this information.
Thank you very much, Richard, for that presentation. Do we have any comments, questions from the council regarding Richard's drought summary?
Just a little addition, because part of my thing was to check out the plant too, which I have not been able to do yet. So that's a really intricate part of this. If water was to be trucked in, is the allocation and distribution of that water. So that's something like what you see this month will be double the information within a month. I predict at the rate we're moving here. So.
Thank you, David. Really, I think this is just an excellent call to at least those who are watching now, and anytime we can get the word out, to have as much public involvement in tomorrow's meeting and tonight and any discussion regarding water. Richard, I think if anything, this is a great opportunity just to encourage people to participate. And the more knowledge we have is in our back pocket at all times, I think the more useful we'll be in trying to solve this issue. Do we have any public comment or questions for Richard or for the council regarding this? Ms. Levine? And Richard, would you mind unsharing your screen just so we have?
That would be Gabe. Thank you.
Go ahead, Paula.
I think now is the time to read my 3 minutes. I've done a lot of cutting and pasting, and I hope I can read my writing. Okay. To fulfill the purpose number 2 of Resolution 2020-102, to, I quote, analyze potential options of water sources, ... I recommend the council approve the Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District feasibility study, preferably 6 months ago. But since that's not feasible tonight, but since that's not feasible either, because it's not on the agenda, I'm not quite sure how the agenda process works and the timing of all that, but I'm going to stick to what I've written here. Then as soon as you can. Dwight Miller's report on the potential option of connecting to Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District includes a letter from John Friedenbach, which answers some of Dwight's water questions. I quote, "We have concluded our internal study. Obviously, ... Obviously, a pipeline to the Rancheria has not been constructed, but as they say, the train is leaving the station. If the Trinidad City Council wants any possibility to join in a mainline extension project, they need to act expeditiously." After doing intensive research during the last few months to make up for the 30 years of being oblivious to where my city water comes from, I have learned a great deal about Trinidad water history, the State Water Board, Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District, and local politics. However, the logistics of how to work effectively with the city is challenging, especially since Trinidad's water situation is so complicated and controversial. The community is polarized, and someone needs to work on WAC's objective number 1, to provide a public forum to address and discuss water concerns and solutions. I know some people don't like the Water Advisory Committee's acronym of WAC, but honestly, after spending X number of hours on the computer researching all these issues, it seems so appropriate to use WAC as an acronym for this whole subject.
You have 30 seconds left, Paula.
Oh my God. Public WAC members chose other tasks outlined in Resolution 2021-02, and no one chose to work on objective number 1. I volunteered to work on it and have been working on it, such as formulating an educational letter to be sent to water customers and sphere of influence residents. It's pragmatic to send educational material with the drought letter that Mr. Klumpus recommends in his report, which I didn't hear you reiterate that to the council. It seemed like an appropriate place for you to do that, because you could have, I guess, passed a motion to create this letter, and it's just going to be another month before it's created, which is one of the problems. It is clear we need to look at all water options, including Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District. A feasibility study needs to be done. Educating the public and civil debate will follow to tone down the emotional hysteria. WAC and the council needs to act sooner than later.
Thank you, Paula, for your comments.
Welcome.
Shirley, I see that your hand is up.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to make a few comments after reading, the information in Richard's report. And previously, the city voted no to not do or not participate in the Humboldt Bay Water District feasibility study. And personally, my opinion then was that's part of prudent planning. And the city could always, opt not to engage after seeing the feasibility study. So I hope it's not too late now to sign on with Humboldt Bay Water District to at least do that study, because you can't move forward without it. That's just the first step to engage with the Humboldt Bay Water District. So I was a little, I don't know, it was ironic to see it on your planning list as to investigate sourcing water from Humboldt Bay when the city council unanimously voted no just a few months ago. So again, I hope it's not too late to engage in that proper planning for, water future. And the other ironic thing to me is on the same list, it was Dave Grover's duty to investigate trucking potable water in. And again, a few months ago, many people were extremely negative when Trinidad Rancheria suggested that we could truck in water for Trinidad Rancheria use in times of shortage or drought to help out and alleviate pressure on the city's water system. Now, a few months later, as the drought condition worsens, the city is looking at these exact same things that the Rancheria had proposed and is engaged in. As you know, we have actively signed on with the Humboldt Bay Water District to do a feasibility study. So those are just observations that I have, and I hope that the city can move forward, be progressive and like Paula said, take the hysteria out of, or whatever word she used, take that out of the discussion and just look at it based on facts. I think Richard said that. Richard said that earlier, that he likes to base his reports on facts, and I do like that approach. So thank you, Richard, for your comprehensive council report.
Thank you, Ms. Laus. Other comments, questions from the public? All right, at this point, this is a discussion item. And so, Mr. Grover, looks like your hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify something. That was a 3-2 vote on the Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District feasibility study. Just for the record here.
All right,
And
thank you.
I was one who wanted that study.
Oh, thank you. You're correct. Thank you. I misremembered.
I see a hand up from Ms. Provolt.
Good evening. I'm not able to turn my video on because I actually am at a baseball game with my granddaughter, but I wanted to hear about this really important issue for our city. And I do want to thank all of you for the attention that you're giving to this really important topic. I really like the quote that Richard had mentioned at the very beginning of his discussion here about, if we're talking about the drought, it's almost too late, right? There's several stages that are happening here. And I think there's an immediate stage, which you're doing is following the Luffenholtz Creek, flow. And what can we do immediately? And then there's short term, medium term, and long term And I do think that looking at different water systems as Mill Creek or Humboldt Bay, those are long-term things. So I do think the council needs to piece it out that way. What are some short-term things, in 3 months, if we are no water, what's our action plan? So what's the short term, what's the midterm, and what's the long-term plan, for this? Because I don't think, we all realize that, it's going to get worse before it gets better, before our climate situation changes and before, our world heals in this situation. So, I appreciate you letting me speak, and just thank you again for your attention to this important topic.
Thank you, Ms. Provel, and especially for calling in from your daughter's game. And again, I think just to let folks know, the advisory committee is exploring options that the advisory committee came up with. So any advisory committee is really driven by its own charge that the city has given the group and the interests of the folks on the committee and those who call in through the public comment section of any public meeting. So just a little background as to what's going on with that advisory committee, and any further or closing comments regarding this discussion item of Richard's presentation on our drought situation in the state. Go ahead, Paula.
So just to clarify, when somebody speaks for 3 minutes and then stops speaking, one can come back again at a later time and say a few words.
Council, do we want to hear another?
It's not going to be 3 minutes, but I'm just trying to figure out how the council works. And
what I do generally is I ask the council's input at this point if we want to hear someone beyond their 3 minutes. So council, give me a thumbs up or down if we want to hear more comments.
Yeah, I thought we always base it on how many people are in line too. If there was a bunch of people, we wouldn't, but if there's not, we do.
Okay, it sounds like those who are nodding say yes. Paula, please proceed.
So the Water Advisory Committee is meeting tomorrow, and of course I'll be there. And I'll bring up the issues I brought up tonight, the issues I brought up in multiple letters, probably to almost everyone that's here. I want to ask about the timing of bringing it to the council for another vote for the feasibility study. Because if the Water Advisory Committee meets right after, it keeps delaying it another month. So if the Water Advisory Committee has like a special session after tomorrow, then potentially next month, can the council vote again on this issue? I know how difficult it is. I know that I watched the videos of last winter's meetings, but as John Friedenbach says in his letter, we don't have a whole lot of time, and 6 months have passed. I spoke to him like 4 months ago, and I asked him, well, how much time is left? And he said, well, June. He'd like to know by June. Well, it's July, and next month is August.
So Paula, if I may address your question, the way the agenda works is if there are substantive changes in the landscape around a particular item, discussion item, agenda item, whatever, then the agenda review committee, which is the mayor pro tem and the city manager and I, have a meeting every week to discuss what's up and what will be in the agenda. If we are presented with substantive changes in the landscape, then we can bring an agenda item back to discuss something new about the agenda item. But simply bringing an agenda item back because members of the community disagree with the vote is not a procedure that we follow currently in Trinidad.
It's not
So
a
what-
question of disagreeing with the vote. It's a question of the timeline, the objectives of the Water Advisory Committee to investigate options. And the only way to continue investigating the option of Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District, and I don't think anybody would disagree that it's at least an option. It's a potential option.
So I'm gonna end the discussion right here, because what I'm gonna ask for is an update from the advisory committee that meets tomorrow. And we'll consider this item based on the discussion that happens tomorrow. I just feel like now we're getting in a back and forth, and that's not productive. And it's also not allowed because it's not an agenda item. It's not on the agenda for this evening. So I will seek input from the committee if I'm not able to participate myself tomorrow, and we'll see what the advisory group says.
Can I just ask one brief question?
What's that?
This information, just to clarify, this information needs to come from the Water Advisory Committee, not anyone else.
You know, it needs to be brought to the city council's attention with substantive differences, substantive additions to the previous decision. So we're gonna end this discussion now. You and I can talk offline later, but I'm gonna move on to the next item. Thank you very much.
Okay.
The next item is discussion presentation regarding stormwater project outreach and update. And so at this point, Eli, if you can give us an update on our stormwater project.
Okay, I will get started, and I believe that Dagan Short is on the line, and his with GHD. So basically, the city had went out to bid on the stormwater project, and we found 3 bidders that bid, and out of those 3 bidders, GR Sunberg was the low bidder. So the project was awarded to them as the contractor. And Dagan Short of GHD is the construction manager, and he should be on the call for this update. So I will pause to see if he is one of the markings there. Okay.
Well, thank you, Eli. So yeah, I'm Dagan Short. I'm an engineer with GHD. I'm one of the design engineers on this project. I think I've been working on this for over 8 years, and then I've been the construction manager for the last 2 phases, and also the construction manager for this phase. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to go through basically the purpose of the ASBS project, for those of you that are not familiar with it, a brief timeline and key dates, expected traffic delays, phasing of the current construction of this project for this summer, project benefits, and then questions. So the purpose of the ASBS project, which was kicked off quite a while ago, was because the city received a letter from the State Water Surface Resources Control Board regarding the Trinidad Bay and identifying the area of special biological significance, otherwise known as ASBS. There are currently 34 designated areas along California coast, and we are lucky to have one here, which is down by the harbor there. So the city pursued grant funding and completed basically an integrated coastal waters management plan with many partners and stakeholders to address the requirements from the Surface Water Resources Control Board letter. So the requirements to address that included a stormwater action plan identifying projects within the city with the overall concept to utilize proven technologies, utilize a gravity-based system, minimize maintenance requirements, and utilize dispersed infiltration areas. The brief timeline and key dates are as above. So what we've done is this is the third phase of the project. The first, basically what kicked this off was the Integrated Coastal Water Management Plan that was submitted in 2008. And that gave us, basically kicked us in gear to develop the design plans and technical specifications for the first construction season, which happened in 2014, which was Trinity Street and Ocean Avenue. We went through a second phase in 2018, which dealt with Hector Avenue and East Street. And this is the largest phase as we near the completion of this project at the end of this year, which is going to entail Underwood Drive, Edward Street, Ewing Street, Lower Beach parking lot area. And we also have a coupled project with this where we're separating the seawater from the stormwater from the HSU Marine Lab. And that is being paid for by the HSU Marine Lab itself. So here's a general overview of the project locations where they're at right now. The only minor caveat that I would say with this is that the Marine Lab that is showing up in the center of this drawing does not show the stormwater controls or separation components that we'll be installing. And it's fair to note that most of the stormwater work that's happening at the lab is within the HSU property boundary. The only exception for that is the tie-in on Edward Street and the manhole there, and then as we descend down Galindo. So there will be expected traffic delays. There are some areas that basically we have stormwater controls going from curb to curb on the side of the road. But the objective is to minimize impacts to residents, businesses, tourists, and recreational commercial activities. And how we're doing this is we're working with the contractor to work out a phase sequencing of the project, which I'll share here in a little bit. We're still trying to work that out. But the idea is to always allow one-lane traffic control in isolated areas. We always want access for residents, emergency vehicles, and commercial vehicles. Unfortunately, we will have some reduced parking areas in areas of construction when that is ongoing. And pedestrian routes will be provided, may detour around activities, and delays will be temporary and limited to areas of active construction. The phasing of this is being impacted right now. So as Eli mentioned, GR Sundberg has been awarded the project, and I've been working with them this week on looking at product submittals and looking at basically some requests for information and trying to put in the details of where they're at right now. But the biggest thing that is really affecting this project right now is the lead time for various products, specifically the pipe, the high density polyethylene pipe that we're installing for the infiltration basins. The lead time on that is incredibly long at this point. We're seeing 4 to 8 weeks lead time on that. So right now, basically, construction will not be initiated until at least another 4 weeks, but it's a moving target. And if we can get you guys on the email list that'll be sent out once a week, we'll give you an update on what has been addressed during that time. But right now, I'm expecting a schedule from the contractor this Friday to give me an idea on how he's going to phase this construction and at what points in time he'll be working in what areas. So the biggest things that we want to basically look at for the construction area is that not all areas of construction will be constructed at once. And that's something that we've reiterated towards the contractor to be very cognizant of that. However, more than one site may be under construction at once. The contractor may choose to use 2 different locations and that are maybe not mutually exclusive, but are in areas that that would be easy to work around. Obviously, areas down by the parking lot in Edward Street, we're very conscientious of that. The removal of the ocean outfall will be probably the last item. And the reason for that is that we don't want to remove that outfall unless the up gradient stormwater structures have been constructed and are basically tied into the system. We don't want to install or not install the systems and have a rainfall event and then have the outfall removed down in the bottom, which would create some definitely some problems. So as I mentioned, the contractor is developing their approach and schedule. I hope to have that by this Friday. Once I do have that, I will distribute that. Updates on construction schedule will be emailed weekly to those who are interested in receiving updates. So the overall project benefits here is basically the idea of we're basically eliminating the stormwater discharge point from the city that is down by the marina area there. This helps protect Trinidad Bay. It replaces aging city stormwater infrastructure. It engages the city with other stakeholders such as HSU, the Trinidad Rancheria, addresses regulatory requirements, and utilizes available grant funding for the project. And that's all I've got. I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Dagan. Questions? I'd actually like to start with one. If I could ask that all of the counselors be added to that list of weekly updates, that would be very much appreciated.
Yes.
And then there was a comment about traffic. I'm not sure if Eli has already spoken to you, but we're pretty concerned about large vehicles like motorhomes getting stuck down there for the duration of the summer because they won't be able to turn around. Is there already some plans in place to either prevent or at least limit the size of vehicles that are heading down the hill?
That's a really good question, and we've been talking about that. We've also been in communication with the Trinidad Rancheria here and their parking area down there. They were very concerned about not isolating their restaurant or any of the service access to their pier there for tour guided boats. So the Rancheria is asking for a parking attendant to facilitate parking in that area down there. But as far as like RVs and oversized vehicles or vehicles with trailers and whatnot, yeah, I'm thinking that basically we're going to have some signage down there explaining when these roads will be blocked off or when congestion will happen, and we'll have to move from that point. But that's a good question.
Yeah, thank you for considering, and I'm sure that Sunberg is no stranger to moving traffic and whatnot during their projects, but it's especially challenging in the summertime.
Yes.
When motorhomes get down there on a non-busy day, even more so when it is. So thank you for kind of making sure that one gets thought through.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments from the council?
I'll probably be engaged in this process a lot more, just to give you a heads up, because I have a lot of construction background and I find this very interesting.
Sure.
Infrastructure.
Will this project include swales such as that are found in the upper parts of town?
No, there's no bioswales included in this, nor rain gardens.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any comments or questions from the public regarding this presentation on our stormwater? And right now, I have to scroll through our limited attendees. I don't see any hands up. All right. Thank you very much again, Dagan, for joining us. We look forward. The two best days are when this project starts and when this project ends. So it's going to be a fun summer. And just out of curiosity, and Shirley, I know this is a little bit out of the scope, but I believe the Rancheria will be working on their stormwater next summer, their stormwater work next summer down in the parking lot area.
Yes, fortunately, they're doing that next summer.
Okay.
Otherwise, logistically, that would be quite a challenge this summer.
We were back in the day before COVID, we were definitely curious how that was going to work out. I was confident that it would have worked out, but this is a lot easier to do it one after the other.
I also think having GR Sunberg as the contractor is beneficial this time too. I've worked with them quite a bit in the past, but with their familiar relationships down there and having issues with the parking lot, I think that's to our advantage.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you very much. And we look forward to those for those updates.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Moving on to our last discussion item regarding resolution 2021-08, authorizing the city to sign funding agreements for Cycle 10 Highway Safety Improvement Program projects funded by Caltrans. Eli, I turn it over to you for your introduction.
Okay. So back in November, the city had submitted 3 applications for this California Caltrans Highway Safety Improvement Program. So HSIP is what it's called. And that's for set aside funding. And in March of this year, Caltrans notified the city that all 3 of our applications were approved. The applications are for 3 types of improvements: crosswalk enhancements, guard rail upgrades, and edge line striping. So this is to basically give you some information regarding the project with the proposal from our engineer to prepare the plans. And at the same time, for us to pass a resolution authorizing either myself as city manager or the mayor to execute the HSIP funding documents. So those are the 2 things that we're asking for tonight. The resolution 2021-08 to authorize funding, and also to authorize the city manager to execute a task order with GHD, our city engineers, to complete the environmental engineering and construction management services for the HSIP project. So I will entertain questions if anyone has some.
Mr. Davies.
Yes, could you elaborate on what edge striping means? Because I'm very leery of that. There's in town, white striping was placed on Ocean Avenue for, I don't know, an undisclosed reason, I guess. It's the only residential town that seems to have striping. And I understand that Caltrans requires certain types of things be done with their projects, as we found out with the now defunct Van Wyck Trail project. And I'm very concerned that all of a sudden, all around our village, there would be white edge striping on every street, which would, in my opinion, take away the village atmosphere and turn it into more of an urban atmosphere. So can you explain what that edge striping would be?
Well, usually the 2 benefits for the edge line striping are, number 1, especially when it is dark or it's rainy, it helps the driver to be able to see where the road ends so they don't end up in someone's front yard. In addition to that, it also helps when pedestrians or bicyclists are riding along the street or walking along the street. If they can try to be by the edge line striping or away from where the cars are, if there's enough room, it helps them feel a little bit more comfortable, and realizing that the driver could tell that that's where technically they should be in that lane, and not veer off of that lane and possibly strike the pedestrians. So those are the couple things that I see that would be advantageous. Otherwise, we could always have the city engineer weigh in a little bit more with the specific information regarding where that edge line striping areas that they would be suggesting.
And I remember in previous discussions, Tom, and I can't remember if you were on the council, so I don't know how far this goes back, but when a street is narrow enough that there's no center line, that it's recommended that there are the fog lines. I don't know if you remember that discussion. There was some sort of limitation when there's no center line because the street's under a certain width, that fog lines are put in. Jack, are you remembering that, or?
No, but I did want you to note that the striping, according to this, is done on Trinidad Frontage Road, Stagecoach Road, and West Haven Drive. Those are the only 3 areas they have down here for edge line striping.
Okay, thank you. I'm just very concerned about the appearance of our town turning into very much of an urban atmosphere. We have seems to be permanent signs in the middle of the street in front of the school saying that there's a crosswalk. We also have flashing lights that there's a crosswalk there. There just seems to be an edging in of all of this large city traffic delineations. And I'm just very concerned about that happening in this town. And I hear all of the safety concerns and things, but with the speed limit of 15 miles an hour on the residential surface streets at the top of the hill, and some of that takes care of itself. But thanks, Jack, for pointing out where those stripings would be. I didn't see that. And I just want us to be cognizant of these projects that we're not, we always hear we're not like a cookie cutter town, but with a lot of these Caltrans projects, we become a cookie cutter town. And I would hope that that's not our end outcome on a lot of these projects.
And just since you bring it up, I'm going to remind folks the crosswalk enhancements are proposed for Main Street at View Avenue, Edwards at Hector, and Edwards at Galindo. Guardrail upgrades, Scenic Drive south of Langford, and Patrick's Point north of Ocean. That doesn't make any sense to me.
No.
I think it might be Ocean Grove. I'm not sure what that's supposed to be. But it's Patrick's Point Drive, and then Edge Line, as Jack indicated, on Frontage, Stagecoach, and West Haven. Really, those roads leading into town are the ones that are proposed to get the striping.
Okay. And what are crosswalk enhancements? Are we going to have more flashing lights, or?
All the plans I've seen have been just for crosswalks. But remember that this is to enter into the feasibility, and then the design still comes back to the city for input. So we always have that second layer of scrutiny and input when it comes back for design.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Paula?
While you're talking about road improvements and cross walks, there were 2 accidents by the Civic Building after that road work was done in the parking lot by the tennis court. One woman ended up in the hospital, and the other woman was injured shortly after that project was done. And you had just mentioned the design would be signed off by the city. I'm just wondering what happened with the design of that particular project, and is there any update about making any kind of improvements or changes to that sidewalk project? Does everybody know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, and we're talking about a authorization to enter an agreement or a grant for something unrelated. Paula, can we talk offline after this and
Yes.
give you an update?
Okay, sorry.
No, it's okay. I need to stick to the agenda because that's what the Brown Act requires me to do. So,
Okay.
any other questions, comments regarding HISPA? I have to check my HSIP. Cycle 10 project. I got a lot of acronyms, folks, so thank you for bringing me back, Eli. Tom, go ahead.
Just to clarify, this is all funding. There's no match from the city.
I'll have to verify that, but from my recollection, there wasn't a match because otherwise it would be part of this.
Yeah, I didn't see it in the staff report.
Yeah, the very last page, page 8, has the cost project totals and does not show a city match. So if there is a city match, I will bring that back to the council.
Okay, thank you.
A match is a tool for starting a project. Typically, matches.
All right, at this point, we are looking for a motion regarding this agenda item. Anyone willing to take a stab at it?
Yes, I'll make that motion, even better this time. An ordinance as amended, wait. Time on, I'm still on the last one. If anybody else has it, go ahead. I lost my place in my
Page 86.
Okay, that might be easier said than done.
Resolution 21-08.
Yeah, there it is. I'll make a motion, the Trinidad City council authorizing the city manager or mayor to sign funding agreements for all HSIP projects funded by Caltrans. Hope I said that correctly.
I'll second that.
Nicely done, Mr. Grover. First by Grover, second by West. Gabe, can you give us a roll call vote, please?
Yeah, we'll go right to the vote. Councilmember Grover,
Aye.
Davies,
Hang on, I'm unmuted. All right, I was trying to read something. Yeah.
Bumpus,
Yes.
West,
Yes.
and Latch.
We are, yes, we are slipping, folks. Thank you for that roll call
And
vote.
then if I could ask Gabe to repeat that, because from my recollection, it just talked about passing the resolution 2021-08, because there's a second action.
Yeah, let me make sure I'm unmute. Okay, so the motion on the floor is to adopt resolution 2021-08, authorizing the city manager and the mayor to execute HSIP funding documents. And it looks like there's a second part of the motion that wasn't read by Councilmember Grover, but it is part of this project here, or approval. It is.
Okay, I can do that now?
Yeah, you can. Well, I'll read it and you can just affirm
Yes.
being part of the motion, which is to authorize the city manager to execute a task order with GHD Inc. to complete the environmental engineering and construction management services for the city of Trinidad Cycle 10 HSIP project.
Okay, I'll amend my motion to include that second bullet point.
And I'll second all that.
As read by city clerk.
And then I would suggest a revote then too.
All right, so we have a first and second amended. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Grover,
Yes.
Davies,
Yes.
Wampus,
Yes.
West,
Yes.
Mayor Ludwig,
Yes.
passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. All right, that concludes tonight's agenda items. So it is customary then to discuss future agenda items. We had intended to bring the government to government policy back to tonight's meeting, but our city attorney was unable to attend the meeting. And so we will definitely have that on our August meeting. We've also had a request for discussion regarding the amount charged in the transient occupancy tax from 10 back to 12% or some version thereof. So we'll bring that item back as well to amend the ordinance or just to discuss amending the ordinance for the short-term rental. So we have those two items for sure. Do we have other agenda items that people wish to bring forth? Richard?
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be at least a few Water Advisory Committee reports. I'd like to make sure that there's time that those individuals that created the reports can present them and then get feedback from the council.
So then we'll look for a fairly significant portion of our August meeting to be reports out from the advisory committee.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other future agenda items?
Also, the second ordinance reading for the water shortage contingency plan.
Very good. Paul,
And
I see that your hand is up as well.
Yes.
Go ahead, Paula. You put yourself on mute. You're good.
I'm good?
Yep.
Okay. Just to clarify what Richard said about the reports from the Water Advisory Committee, I'd like an understanding that there's some potential to bring another vote on the feasibility study next.
Paula, I have sent you an email with my phone number. If you and I could talk about city procedure and protocol, I think that will benefit all of us. So I would really like to speak with you as soon as possible, just about how city business works, and we'll go from there.
Okay, Thank you.
You're welcome. Other future agenda items? All right, with that then, I will adjourn tonight's meeting. Thank you very much, counselors and public, for our July meeting. Have a good evening.
Thank you, and see you guys later.
Thanks,
All
everybody.
right, thank you.
We'll be talking to you, Richard, tomorrow.
Take care.
Enjoy the rest of your time. See you soon.
Thank you. Thank you.